Three, two, one.
Perfect.
All right. And we are near the end of our Scream Share and Thrill.
Oh, yay, another scary movie.
We are talking about, if you haven't seen the title, we're talking about Dracula. Dracula, 1992.
Dracula.
No, not Dracula. That's different. That's either Rob Zombie, White Zombie, or I've seen some drag shows that have borrowed that name that were pretty cool looking too. So,
I want to talk about Dracula.
Dracula? You want to talk about Dracula?
Dracula.
Yeah, the one with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder and Carrie Elwes and
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
Yeah, Sir Anthony
Hopkins. Put some
Hopkins.
"sir" on his name, please.
Sir
Some
Anthony
sir-
Hopkins.
It's weird when the word that you're replacing is stank, is what my mind is wanting to call it to. Put some stank on his name? I'm like, no, wait, no. I think I'm getting my idioms
I thought you
mixed
were going to
up.
call him Stank Anthony Hopkins, and I was like, that's a whole different story.
Anthony Hopkins.
Stank Anthony Hopkins. That's a good
Do you know something that we don't? Is there some behind-the-scenes footage? Or
I don't know.
he was method acting. He was borrowing from Jared Leto, and he just like smeared himself and shit whenever he was showing.
Method acting. You go ahead and lead this one, Kel. This is your baby.
Oh, you do this to me every time, and I make the point every time that if you make me talk
I
the
feel
whole
like
episode,
letting him lead this one is probably the worst possible because Kelly is like, this is his thing.
That's my plan.
yeah, like I took classes about Dracula in college. I wrote and directed a show for Dracula right before when COVID hit. It kind of fucking killed the show. And yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily call me a huge fan of Dracula. I like some variations on the Dracula story. I'm very opinionated on Dracula. So I don't know. You might want
All true fans are.
Yeah, if you want to get a word in, you might want to be the one to lead it.
Let's talk about that. Oh, Jamie, what's your relationship to Dracula like as a whole?
Oh, well, I'm a little goth girl at heart, so obviously Dracula is kind of a thing for me. I really enjoy it. And in particular, I enjoy this version because it did sort of create my personality for me in high school, if you will. Very Victorian goth, Jamie.
Well, the style is it's so cool. And it came out in 92. So like right in the grunge era where goth was really trying to become a little bit more popular. We have these big name stars, Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, dressing in in Victorian style dress, and and the music is good, and blah 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 blah. It's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. No. It's got its problems, but
and the scenery and the huge sets and the decor, and love it.
So I am a horror guy, and growing up, I always thought like until this, I always thought Dracula was like lame and bad because all we had for 70 years was the Bela Lugosi popular
I want to suck your blood.
Yeah, all that
and those kind of really really campy and just early film movies,
right? And so I'm growing up on like your Freddys and your Jasons and your Michael Myerses and your zombies and The Thing, like, horror stuff, and I'm like, oh, that old boring stuff. So then this movie comes out.
That's what the kids call your stuff nowadays,
yeah,
right?
No, 100%. But this movie comes out, and I'm like, okay, this is actually, I'd never watched the original Dracula, so I watched this, and I'm like, okay, there's something to this story that's a little more than I was expecting. But then I read the novel. And the novel Dracula is fucking terrifying, and I didn't read that until I was like 30 years old or something, and I was like, wow, this is actually, I can see why this has existed in extremely, the public mind for over 100 years, because it's actually very, very, very scary. And so I have a newfound, in my like second half of my life, appreciation of Dracula as the concept and story of Dracula from reading the novel. That's
kind of funny because the more I've studied it, the less I've kind of fallen in love with it, but certain variations I really like, but I'll get into that. But to hit on your point of it being terrifying even nowadays to read, the difference of what made Dracula, I mean, I don't want to speak with an all-sweeping arm and saying this is true for everybody and this was true for the time or anything like that. but from what I've gathered at the time, the part of the reason that it became so popular is that it released in sort of like this pulp kind of style, where you were getting a few chapters at a time, and then they compiled it into one big book when the story was complete. And so for everybody out there in the world, it was right on the border. This was National Enquirer is the equivalent. This was the found footage film of the 1900s.
Right, published letters of Jonathan Harker or whatever, right?
And that's what made it so believable. You didn't have a narrator saying, and then Jonathan walked into the room. You had Jonathan's letter that came a month later than it should have, and then you're going, wait, I remember we were waiting to hear from Jonathan a long time ago, and we figured that he died. Oh, he is alive, and he's at a fucking in a convent in Sweden or wherever the hell he's at. How did he get there? What's going on? Then he comes home, and we're hearing from Mina that Jonathan is acting very different, and even Jonathan is writing about, I feel like what I don't know what he says, but and this found footage, this found letters, these kind of things gave it an air of authenticity. That's what really shocked the masses. But there were legends of things that were similar to vampires in a lot of different cultures. So for some people, it resonated that way too. They're reading these journals from these quote unquote scientists that are in Romania and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden they're going, wait a minute, that's just like what my grandmother used to tell me. That's why they put bells on the top of graves and such. And, yeah, it freaked people out for that. So I'm glad that somebody that nowadays can read it in their 30s and still get freaked out, because that's kind of the point.
Well, it does such a great job of like letting you imagine what's going to happen, and so it's not everything's pointed out and spelled out precisely. It's very theater of the mind and let yourself freak yourself out kind of thing.
A couple things like I don't know if we even necessarily need to do a beat by beat.
I think everybody, lots of people know Dracula.
Yeah, but I mean our notes are probably going to be in a bit of order anyways. So just starting right from the start, we have what makes this different. This movie is different from the novel in the sense that this whole Elisabetta Dracula romance is not in the book. There's no note that Vlad the Impaler's wife committed suicide, and that's what turned him into the original vampire and yada. That is not based in the book. However, I think this is one of those moments where this makes the story stronger when you try to build that other element, because that way it makes Dracula more of a sympathetic figure, because you see that he was actually fighting for the Christian church. Apparently he was fighting in the Crusades, and somebody sent a letter to his wife saying that he was killed in battle. So she committed suicide off the top of the tower. He came home a week later when he found out that she was dead or whatever, and when he comes home, finds out that she's died from committing suicide because of betrayal. He lashes out in anger and is mad at the world, and then the priests decide in that moment to tell him, oh, and by the way, because she killed herself, she's going to fucking hell for all eternity, and she's going to burn because she's a dirty fucking person. And he's like, you know what? Fuck your church, fuck your God, fuck all of you. I'm not even going to stab you. I'm going to stab this goddamn cross, and it's going to leak transmission fluid, and I'm going to drink it, and I'm going to turn into Superman. You just watch, motherfuckers. And that's kind of what happens.
Yeah, and that's become like a staple now in the Dracula story.
Yep.
And just, I mean, the visuals of this are extremely unique too. Like his armor that looks like flayed, muscle.
Yeah, and it's so deep red, and it's in the same kind of like
it's
motion
so
that your muscle would be on. Oh, at the time, I remember thinking like, "What the fuck is this? This doesn't look like any medieval armor I've ever seen." But now here we are, like 32 years later. And I'm like, and keep in mind, this is 32 years ago. Anyways, 32 years later, I'm looking at it going, wow, that's kind of cool. I'm glad that they took that stylistic choice instead of making it just basic, like, silver armor or whatever.
Thank you for pointing out how long ago that was that I was getting ready to go into high school. Hell, really appreciate that.
I'm sorry. 32 years.
To this movie's credit, it does a lot of unique visual choices in the way it's filmed. It's kind of like, it is Francis Ford Coppola. It is a filmmaker's film with all the different techniques that are used, like the intro with all the miniatures and just the red backdrop and all that kind of stuff is really, really, really kind of fun to watch. It's like a combination and mixture of classic filmmaking techniques from the 20s and 30s when the original Dracula movie is from, with like modern sensibilities.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes. Yep. I was thinking that it's like there's a juxtaposition between, like, it kind of sets the stage that it's going to be almost a little bit camp, that it's going to be maybe not camp, but like a children's TV show type of really good puppets, but puppets nonetheless, and this like paper background and that kind of thing. But then it also like right away, then you start seeing these big, huge, sweeping sets of downtown London with hundreds of people dressing perfectly in actual Victorian garb, and then you're like, okay, which way is it? Is this movie like a big, serious $1 million movie, or a kind of campy, a little bit, we're dealing with puppets and paper backgrounds? And the answer is yes. Because, like, not too much later, we see a train, and it's a fucking toy train. They don't even try to, like, hide the fact it's a toy train. It's a train set, symbolizing a character moving from one side of the world to the other. But like we had discussed, is that any different than the Indiana Jones flying from one country to another, and we see a paper map and then like an animated ... showing us where he went? No, it's no different. It's just a different
I love it. And you have like the big oversized prop of Jonathan's journal, like overlaid over the mountainside where the train is going past, and it's very fun to watch if you like to look at movie making techniques. This one's a doozy. There's also like the scene later on when Dracula first comes to London, and it's filmed on that actual old film, and colorized, and that has that herky-jerky motion, and it kind of transforms into modern film, like it blends itself into it. Very cool.
The See Me Now scene, which always like, so many different connections. That's like a triple or quadruple entendre or something. That scene is just wonderful. I would like to also point out that some of the differences and some of the similarities. So, like in the movie or in the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, there is no mention of Elisabetta or Dracula's wife or anything like that. We don't get that much into making Dracula a sympathetic character. However, in real life, the person that Vlad the Impaler, the person that everybody assumes was the inspiration for Dracula, he was married and his wife was named Justina. My version, I totally stole from this 1992 film and used that intro of Dracula being married and his wife committing suicide, and that's what pushes him over the edge, and that's what pretty much makes him anti-Christian. Except the difference is I use the actual woman's real name, Justina, because Justina sounds beautiful too, and it's with a Z. It's Juztina. I guess maybe that's the anglicized spelling or whatever, but I just thought, or like, why would you? I mean, Elisabetta is a beautiful name, but like Justina is also pretty fucking good look. Like, why do you need to? Anyways,
I feel like just because that Justina has that Tiffany effect to it, where it doesn't sound like it really could be that old. It sounds too modern.
Regal.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
it sounds too modern. I feel like that might have been part of it because it does feel like a more modernized name.
Yeah, absolutely. How many people learned what the word impaling means from this movie?
Just from the whole Vlad the Impaler thing. Like I didn't know that was a thing until I heard about that in connection to Dracula.
And how many times have we used the word impale since then, and not to depict a human being having a spear shoved up them?
My thing was I would poke someone with implements. I was known as Vladislav the Poker.
Hey, they made a whole reality show based on it called I Was Impaled.
What?
They did?
Yeah, let me tell you about this. So this is a fun story. This will be good context. Me and my fiance at the time were looking for something to watch, and we saw I Was Impaled as the title of this show. I think it was on Discovery. And so we're like, okay, sure, why not? And we go and put that on. And this particular episode happened to be about a truck driver who fell between the cab and the trailer, and he landed on one of the compressor hoses, and it shot into his side and blew a bunch of high pressure air that separated all of his skin from his muscle and filled him with air. And so he went to the hospital, and his skin, he farted and burped out all this air that was in him, and his skin had to
his skin is blown
itself
up like a goddamn
yes,
like Harry Potter's aunt when he sends her to the fucking moon.
Literally, this literally medically happened to this person, and we watched this episode in fascinated horror, and then we looked at each other and we were like, never again will we watch I Was Impaled.
See, a lot of people would have taken that lesson before watching the first episode, but I understand the morbid curiosity. That you're like, I gotta see what this is
that
about.
That entire description just gave me the most visceral reaction of the heebie-jeebies ever.
Right. I was thinking it was either going to be a reality TV show involving workplace accidents, or it was going to be a porn star's guide to
and
journey
there we
to
go to
stardom.
porn again.
Well, I mean, it's impaling.
Is that your stage name, Vlad the Impaler?
I was known as Vladislav the Poker.
This is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I absolutely love this soundtrack, and I don't even love it in the sense that it is my personal favorite. I like the way that it presents the music. It always has it often has simple monotones just plodding, like single notes. So if you think about the primary theme, and as soon as you hear that, you know that some shit is about to fucking go down. Once you like really listen to this music and you kind of like almost memorize it, you'll notice that it's in everything. I see it in fucking NFL ads. I see it in previews for other movies. I see it in fucking Cheesecake Factory advertisements. You hear it everywhere. Anytime somebody wants to ramp up tension and kind of give the idea of like somebody furrowing their brow and getting ready to do battle, this is the kind of music that you're hearing in the background a lot of times. It's that iconic. And it also, like, because it is borrowing from an era of cinema that had a very different way of soundtracking. Like, you'd have like a private piano player or a very small mini orchestra type thing playing along with, the silent movies kind of thing. When Dracula was originally written, shortly after is when silent movies were really a thing. So we had these very sweeping, what we would consider like melodramatic type scores. And you still see them sometimes in like musicals and stuff like that and interstitial music. But what this movie does is it gives you those really, what I would say, like modern things that we still use nowadays, the dun 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 dun, that kind of stuff. But it also, there are times where it has this sweeping 1920s, 1940s, we're talking Sound of Music, Gone with the Wind, Casablanca type, like, the cascading strings, arpeggios, scores, that it's beautiful, but it doesn't stay there too long because it recognizes that this kind of pulls you out of your current day. So it does it on purpose, but then it puts you back into the modern sensibility when battle is going down or when we're thinking about what do our characters do nowadays.
I'm glad you mentioned your first note, because my first note that I wanted to mention is always happy to see Tom Waits, who plays Renfield.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was Tom Waits until I looked it up, like, well after, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now, but, obviously 20 years after the movie came out or whatever.
And then my second note is one day Keanu Reeves will be a real boy. His performance in this is pretty fun. It's like the worst thing about the movie, probably. It feels like a horrible miscast. And Winona Ryder isn't bad, but she's like second in line. So like the two of the leads are like questionable at best, and it's really unfortunate because I really like this movie, but I genuinely like laugh and shake my head anytime Keanu Reeves is on screen talking in this movie.
Is that intentional though?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. For the record, I don't think it was intentional, but if I did find out that it was, it would make 100% sense, because I don't know about anybody else, but when I read Dracula most recently, I found Jonathan Harker and Mina to be the two most insufferable characters in the entire fucking story. They are clueless, they are vapid, they are worried about shit that doesn't fucking matter when they are facing life and death consequences. I mean, eventually Jonathan kind of picks up on it, but even then, he lets his fucking pride get in the way, and he doesn't do anything of value. And Mina, oh god, I could talk for an hour on the representation of Mina in old media as it is, because the way Bram Stoker wrote Mina, she doesn't have a fucking brain. Like, she has enough brain to move her body around and write words on a page, but she doesn't have any agency. My biggest complaint of the original Bram Stoker's Dracula novel is that Mina is such a not even a one-dimensional, she's like a half-dimensional character. And that's where, like, this story, when you connect her to the old Dracula, maybe that's what brings a little bit more agency out of her. And even though it's evil agency, at least she's making a choice, which made me happy. But yeah, I've always found Mina and Jonathan to be the most insufferable characters, and this movie does nothing to assuage that, even though Winona Ryder is one of my first crushes, and to the day I die, Winona Ryder will be in my top 5 most attractive people ever in my mind. She's always been gorgeous to me.
My take on it is that, so I'm going to give Keanu the benefit of the doubt, not really, but we're going to pretend like I am for a moment. And a well-raised Victorian gentleman should have been very stoic and very wooden and very non-committal and very non-emotional, because that is the Victorian way.
Yep.
And Bram Stoker subsequently would have written a woman to be very one-dimensional and have no agency, because that is how a Victorian woman was supposed to act. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was total cultural expectations of the time. I don't see it as bad writing on Bram Stoker's part. I see it as like average writing for the time.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the novel was great. How he wrote Mina was just like, man.
And my first note of the movie was that I love that armor, and that goes back to that armor again, because it's just so beautiful.
Yep. You said the words, you said stoic, you said wooden, and you said, what was the third descriptor? Because those are all accurate. The problem is that you have that across from Gary Oldman fucking acting his fucking ass off.
Right.
Tears streaming down his face.
He was supposed to be the anti-Victorian.
Saying
he sees his wife from across the street and he's already crying. Everybody in the street is having a hard time not staring at him, even on set, because he's so magnetic. Yeah.
I have crossed oceans of time to be with you. And then you have Keanu Reeves going, Mina,
my wife.
But that's, to me, and because like Victorian's one of my hyper fixations, and I did a lot of reading in Victorian novels and stuff growing up, he is the anti-Victorian. So everything else is prim and proper and buttoned up and no emotion and just that very stiff upper lip, and he is the antithesis of that. He is just emotion gushing everywhere, and it's like the result of the repression of the Victorian era versus what happens when that repression is released.
Well, and some could say like Victorian people were pretty fucking wild too. It wasn't in their media a lot.
Right.
So some would say that the Bram Stoker's Dracula, even though it was pushing some boundaries of the time, it wasn't really like reinventing the wheel. All the characters were presented so that the HOA moms and the Karens of the time wouldn't be horribly offended by it, and they would go out and read the novels too. So, I mean, it could say that, yes, the larger part, the status quo of culture was very prim and proper and stuff like that, but there was a lot of fucking weird shit. Like, if you ever look at some of the weird jokes that Victorian people had and some of the weird pictures they took, like, naked but wearing a skull on their head and shit like that, like, what are you doing, bro? Like, but then they were probably just drugged and drunk out of their mind on absinthe and fucking mercury in their fucking hats and shit.
And wallpaper and makeup and food.
Yeah.
And eating mummies.
Yep. I'm back. My internet dropped for a second.
Yeah, you missed us talking about them eating mummies and poisoning themselves with arsenic in the Victorian era.
What was the last thing you heard from me?
You were talking about
how he was the whole.
Oh, he was wooden. And
okay.
And
I wanted to read some of the critic choice words for Keanu Reeves' performance.
Yeah, do it up.
Entertainment Weekly wrote that Reeves was out of his depth and frequently blasted off the screen by Gary Oldman.
Wow.
Which I fucking believe. I agree with 100%.
That's fitting. That's fitting. I hate to say it because I love Keanu Reeves, and he ends up in a good place. Don't worry, audience. This doesn't ruin his career. He's fine now. But oh god.
Right, he got there eventually. Total Film wrote that in the 29 worst movie miscastings that he was a dreary, milky nothing in a black hole of sex and drama.
Yeah. You know, you could have switched him and Carrie Elwes, and that probably would have made a little bit more sense.
It's listed in 50 performances that ruined movies.
Oh, it didn't ruin it. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Jonathan is supposed to be, like, that's the thing.
To me, it almost ruins it. I feel like this movie would probably be, I don't know, twice as good of a movie without him. It doesn't ruin it.
There are a lot of times that women who are horrible actresses get cast into movies because they are pretty to look at, and this is the male version of that.
Yeah, and like I said, maybe it could be a little bit of intentionality that, like, Keanu was not supposed to be. This movie was the first time that I remember that Dracula was posed as he's attractive, he's romantic, he's justified in some ways, he's not seeking revenge, he's seeking love. Like, this is the first time we see Dracula as a sympathetic character, so them taking the classic hero and dumbing him up, I think that might have been a little intentional.
I think Keanu Reeves was cast only as a hot name to attach to this film. The last quote I'm going to read is a doozy. It says, "It's one thing to cast Keanu Reeves as an esteemed British lawyer, but it's quite another to ask him to act alongside Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins. The two Oscar nominees ran circles around the poor Canadian, exposing his lack of range, shoddy accent, and abysmal instincts for all to see."
Yeah, and you know what? We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like you're saying that they probably hired him because he's young and attractive. Yes, that's probably the number one reason. This other behind the scenes reasons, there may have been other things that they may have discussed. I remember once we were casting for a production that I was part of the casting team. There was 3 of us, and there was a young woman that we were going to be casting in a role, and I was kind of against it because at first I was like, I'm not a real big fan of her performance. She's a little bit wooden out there. I think I'd rather have somebody out there that's bigger. And they said, yeah, but she's got a really big family. And I was like, so? And they're like, yeah, she's got a really big family, and they all come out in full force to come see her shows. So if we cast her, that's like 42 tickets sold on day one. We have 42 tickets sold. And I'm like, oh, all right, I'll find somewhere to put her. We'll find something to do.
That's the scaled down version of studio saying, I need you to put Sydney Sweeney in this movie because she's hot right now and everyone's going to come see the Sydney Sweeney movie. That's like a scaled down version of Hollywood studio meddling.
So then you find a way to hit both boxes. That like, all right, I will cast her, but I'm not giving her a solo. I'm sorry. I draw the line that she's not taking front and center. She will be a part of a couple of duets and stuff like that. We'll give her. It's kind of like when you're a coach of a little league baseball team, like you let every kid bat at least once. Like even if you suck, you're not going to help us win the game, but you're going to get your 2 innings out there or something like that, because everybody's got to learn, everybody's got to try, So this is Scream, Share, and Thrill. Let's talk about the horror of this movie, because there's some genuinely good, creepy thrills and chills.
Oh my gosh, yes. In this. Especially back in 1992.
I love the way, just off the bat, when the coach arrives for Jonathan, and the way it's shot when he lifts him with his stretched out arm into the carriage. The
and
way
it looks practical. I don't know how they did that. Like his arm just reaches out, and instead of being a normal 2.5, 3 foot arm, it's like 6 foot, 7 foot, 10 foot, and it just goes back into his body like nothing. And I'm like, holy shit, great practical effect.
Mm-hmm.
He's wearing this weird xenomorph helmet. There's the Coach Rider.
Yeah, it looked like somewhere between a xenomorph and a plague doctor.
Yeah. It's really cool, and it's creepy, and it's unsettling. All that music, the dark music when it's a little more traditional gothic horror, that stuff's all great. Him in the castle with Jonathan is like, I'm almost taken out of it again by Keanu Reeves, but like the shadows not matching up with where...
The shadows are my favorite part.
It's so good.
I love how they do the shadow play through the whole movie.
It's such a simple thing. You don't think much of it until your eyes pick up on it. Mm-hmm. But if you're aware of it and you go back and watch it again, his shadow is never entirely in alignment with him. It's its own thing. It's trying to follow him, but it's barely paying attention to him. Dracula's shadow is bored of Dracula, and it's not worried about what he actually does.
Well, if you've spent that many years with somebody, you'd get bored with them too.
He's like, all right, I get it.
He's going to move his hand this way, and then he's going to move his hand that way, and then he's going to do this.
So scary. If you were so scary, you'd strangle the guy like this.
Yeah. It's a little Peter Pan-ish,
Yep, that's exactly what goes through my mind. Because I don't remember Dracula's shadow. I mean, I remember there being mention of the play of lights not working as it should in the castle, and gravity not working the way it should in the castle. But I don't remember the shadow having its own entity. Maybe it's been a while, and that I just kind of glossed over that. But
I know that is like
a little bit invented.
A fairly common horror trope for Dracula is that he doesn't have a shadow a lot of times. He doesn't reflect in mirrors. There's all those little things that show that he's not quite human.
What does Jonathan do that upsets him when he swings the sword and starts yelling?
Well, because so Dracula looks at the person on the wall and he says, "An ancestor of yours," and he says something about the church, and Dracula says that alliance was not beneficial or something like that. And Jonathan thinks that he's joking, so he goes, indeed. And just that little chuckle is what set him off.
And
so that's,
he reacts
like out of nowhere.
I started cracking myself up because my brain is broken, but I wanted to see that with the Joe Biden why sound effects played over it.
Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay.
Because he's like starts moving fast and flailing his arms, and it's yeah. It's like the same energy that as Dracula. Also, his Dracula's hairy palms. There's something to be said about that. Like, dude, you gotta cut down on the
he reminded me of Fat Bastard from Austin Powers movies. Yeah, I don't think that was intentional.
Especially when you look at who he's sharing the castle with. Like, that really is.
There's no need to be doing that much, Dracula. When you live in a house.
Yeah, well, when masturbation lost its fun. No, but and I think they did a really good job for the time. Like, we kind of take it for granted because this movie has existed in our lives for 32 years. But at the time, there was a little bit of a shock there. Like, you had to be kind of paying attention to even realize that was the same actor from the intro.
Yes.
Like, they look very different. The makeup is done very different. Even the simple addition of, if you take facial hair away from Gary Oldman, it changes he's one of those actors like James McAvoy. He can change the entire look, like the skeletal makeup of his face by just changing his persona, and it's fucking incredible. So I think he did that's one of the makeup, the costuming, and his mannerisms are so different than what you expected. But then if you see that moment of rage where he goes, "What blood flows through these veins," or however he says it, and then you compare that to the beginning where he's renouncing God, and you're like, oh yeah, same man. If you put him side by side, that's the same guy.
It's so disgusting and chilling when he cuts himself shaving and Dracula like sucks the blade.
Every time I see that, I'm like, he's gonna cut his tongue.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure you hit the right side of the blade.
I don't think he's worried about it. I don't think he's worried about cutting his own tongue. We go from all of these hairy arms, old men drinking blood and licking metal, to Mina horny, Michael.
yeah.
That's my note. Mina horny.
Yeah.
Because her and Lucy are just sitting there looking at porn, is what they're doing.
Yep.
They're 19 to 20-year-old young women just looking at porn together, and they're not even really talking about it. They just look at the picture and then look at each other and giggle, and it's kind of like, this is so women having pillow fights in the fantasy of a man's mind.
Yeah.
But it also is a little wholesome because they probably don't know how to voice. Like, even at one point she goes, "Oh, are you excited to do this?" And she goes, "No." He. Like, she doesn't know how to say it because she's not supposed to say it. And
right.
I don't know. I remember Mina. Lucy is the character that I find super interesting in this entire thing because she's, for all intents and purposes, when you look at her, she seems like somebody that's very promiscuous and very sexually active. But according to Mina and according to Lucy, she's not. She's just playing the field. Whereas Mina is the other way around. She's very demure, but it feels like if Dracula could pushed his issue a little bit when Jonathan was stuck, she probably would have given in because she was very much.
I don't even think he would have had to push the issue very much.
No, he just would have had to go for it once,
right.
And she probably would have thrown herself at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And speaking of that sexuality, Dracula in general, but I think specifically this movie and version of it, does a good job, like lots of good sort of horror movies do, to sort of psychologically intertwine some of the sexuality and the horror, and it gets kind of uncomfortable, like the whole Dracula in beast form with Lucy in the yard, and just the noises that she's making when she's like basically dying in infection are extremely sexual.
How many furries were born in that scene? Where the werewolf type right. And this is a weird version of Dracula that we're not used to seeing, like an actual beast. Yeah. This is closer to a lot of the old legends of vampires. They were very beastly. There was a reason why they got along with wolves, because they kind of look like them. Yeah,
I mean, I've seen that drawing a million times over on the internet. You know, the wolf.
Yeah, with
beast.
some of the bits that we don't see, we go ahead and we get close up on the bits with some of the Rule 34 images I've seen.
Right, and it's very much. I feel intentionally designed to make the viewer uncomfortable, as a good horror movie should take the steps to do.
Yeah,
Yep.
a little bit titillated because part of it is very alluring. Like even the set dressing while the werewolf or whatever he is ravaging her. Like they're in this wonderful manicured garden of brambles with
she's got this
stone
beautiful
columns.
flowing dress.
Beautiful flowing dress. There's a little bit of a storm, but it's not raining too hard on him. This is like a romance novel. You could cut a picture of this and put this on a cover of a young adult beast love novel, and nobody would think twice about it. You just have to cover up her nipple.
No, because now I'm going to get all those ads on Facebook again.
Oh, yeah, that's why you're getting those ads, Jamie. It's not because you search for them.
Yeah, no, werewolf porn is not my thing, and I keep getting the ads for it.
Hey, we don't say that. We say interspecies erotica.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Hey, you could always share that with a friend. We'll talk about that. I would like to point out also that we haven't mentioned yet to this point, but eyes are a big theme in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Eyes in the background, eyes in the foreground, where we always see what's going on with eyes, and they're imposed. I thought that was an awesome use of it when Jonathan is in the train, and you see the eyes in the background. It starts out as like the sunset is a little bit different color than the rest of the sky, and then it kind of like comes up, and you see that there's one right next to it that looks exactly like two eyes staring at him, watching him approach. And it's not necessarily that Dracula is literally staring at him from the clouds, but Dracula has a sense that he has a sixth sense of things that are outside of his normal purview, and also that it's almost like an anime where we see the main character heading towards their destiny, and we see like imposed in the background what their destiny is. It's the evil man on the other side that he doesn't know what's coming to him.
Yes, I evoke that exact visual in our D&D game as much as I can, with the two giant red glowing eyes. That's like a classic shot from this movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was going to straight up steal it with our stage production of Dracula, like me and Katie from earlier episodes of our podcast. She was my assistant director on that show, and we discussed how we were going to do that with backdrops and.
Oh, that'd be so cool! Yeah.
And it's super easy if you have just a couple of spotlights with the right kind of lenses to put on them. It'd be super easy to do, or you can use a. Anyways, I'm.
Yada, yada.
Eyes are a big theme, and yada yada yada. I don't know if you all realize this, but Angry Video Game Nerd, I know we've all probably watched his channel at some point. He's come under some controversy lately for some recent things, but either way, back in the day, one of his side things that he was really well known for is analyzing horror films, and he really gets into old horror movies, and I'm sure, Keith, there's a huge crossover there. You probably feel like he was like a brother from another mother in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I've seen several of those, yeah.
One of his videos that he did, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, it's been a while, but he compared all of the different types of Dracula that have been made and tried to score them to see which one was closest to the original novel, which one was closest to the source material. And this one won. So as somebody that's read the books, yes, I can see it. And the only big difference between this and the novel, a huge deviation, is the fact that Dracula is the wife committing suicide and her coming back as Mina. That's completely invented. But I think this is one of those where this made the media better. I think if Bram Stoker were alive and he saw this movie made, he'd probably go, "Oh, that would have been better. Yeah, I should have done that."
Didn't they removed their encounter with him in his home and just stuck it in Mina's? I thought I remember from the novel when he shows up when they're like destroying all his boxes at his townhouse.
Yeah.
Whatever.
If I remember correctly, there is a scene where they go to his home to try to destroy his boxes, but he's not there. He doubled back on them, and he went to where they were keeping Mina, and that's where they have like an interlude where he bites her. They come back and drive him off, but there is no fight there. Then they go back to Carfax Abbey, or whatever, the where he actually bought in London, one of his properties, and then that's where they battle him there. And he ends up getting away barely and going to another one of his properties, and that's when he flees London because he now knows that they're going to come to each of his homes. So if he goes back to his castle in Transylvania, then
and
safer.
I'm slightly upset. I know it's a movie, and you got to make changes to make the thing keep going. And just describing the hopping back and forth sounds like for film sort of a.
It's tedious. You don't need you can condense that into one scene. Yeah.
Exactly. But I love that scene in the novel. It's that's one of the scariest parts is when they actually encounter him in the house and he's like showing kind of his true power. You know, he like turns into a bunch of rats.
Well, and this hunting Dracula down is a really big theme of the book. Because even at the end, when we see, after Dracula goes back to Transylvania, and then we see our party split into two. One is going, it's the priest, or the psychiatrist guy and Mina, and maybe like one or two other people keeping Mina safe and trying to take care of her. The other is the American suitors, two of the American suitors, Van Helsing and Jonathan, and they are trying to hunt down Dracula and chase him down. And they separate and they go down different paths. And eventually the psychiatrist takes Mina to Dracula's castle, I think anyways, near the end. But either way, like, a big theme of it is that the hunting party goes to like 4 or 5 locations and they can't fucking find him. He's a master. That's why people wondered early on, why is he buying like 15 or 20 different properties in London? This is one of the reasons where if you go hunting for him at night, you have a 1 in 20 chance. And he might sleep at a different place every night, or he might not even be in town. His idea was to build these, maybe, I mean, I'm imposing my logic onto him, but have 15 or 16 properties or 15 or 20 properties in every city in the world. Hell yeah, you can just go wherever you want, and all you need is to bring Earth from Transylvania with you in boxes, and you can stay there and regenerate.
That's where it's also where we derive the whole vampire slayer mythology from that goes into every other vampire story of hunting down the vampire. You know, like all of this classic stuff, like Van Helsing, who I love Anthony Hopkins' sort of unhinged portrayal of him. He's a bit of a madman.
Van Helsing is kind of a madman, especially at the time. He's seen as and a lot of people, it has been argued that in Victorian era, when the Dracula novelettes or whatever they were called at the time were released, people of the time probably weren't calling it Dracula to each other. They were calling them the Van Helsing novels because that he was the hero of the story. And it was, I don't remember if it was a conspiracy theory or if it was found to be true afterwards. I don't remember which one it was, but a lot of people felt that this was just, Dracula was a hidden pilot for a Van Helsing series of books. This was the start of the vampire slayer Van Helsing. Well, next week he's going to be facing off against Frankenstein's monster, and that's
I love it.
Where's Van Helsing going this week? That kind of
it's thing. Like horror Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. I mean, but Dracula ended up stealing the stage because everybody's like, holy shit, these vampires are fucking freaky as shit. And next thing you know, here we are 120 years later, still thinking vampires are pretty fucking weird and cool.
I find that interesting because I find Van Helsing to be a very cool character, and I actually have like a little Van Helsing series in my brain. So if I ever make it, maybe that'll be.
Yeah, that your headcanon is completely supported by a lot of different media. I think so. I think you're fine with that.
And before we get too far away from Lucy, I just want to say that I feel like maybe some of that imagery is kind of inspired by Ghostbusters and Dana Barrett, because she's got like a flowing red dress and she's like possessed but acting all sexy. There's a lot of similar portrayal.
Some of the special effects were very similar to Ghostbusters too, with that like that barrier that looks like they just painted it on the film afterwards.
Right. Yeah. So it's something that popped into my head is like, I wonder if Ghostbusters inspired some of this take on that.
A couple of things that we've already kind of moved past it, but when Jonathan gets into the wagon, when this man with the 12-foot long arm reaches out and pulls him into the wagon, and he hears wolves howling in the background and it's a full moon and there's mist on the ground, I'm thinking, oh my god, money makes you do some fucked up shit. Like,
right.
I would never have gotten in that car. I'd been like, you know what, I'm good.
But is it a horror movie if you don't have that nope, this is how it starts, you need to walk away from this moment?
Yeah, somebody's got to make some fucked up decisions, whether it's for sex or money or something like that. Somebody's got to be an idiot in order for a horror movie to continue, kinda. If everybody was smart, horror movies wouldn't exist.
Is it just me, or did you guys also laugh when it looked like Dracula Dutch ovened Mina with the green smoke coming in? It's like I think Dracula's fart creeping up under her covers. Yeah.
And does she make a little wrinkly nose face? Like,
yeah, she's all in distress. Yeah.
Oh, who ate cabbage? Oh my god, cabbage and boiled eggs again, Jonathan?
Pardon me, Mina.
So Mina, we also, when we see her and Lucy talking, one of the times they're talking, Lucy is introducing her to her 3 suitors, which are a very big part of the novel, very big part of this story. They're basically the contingent of heroes. Our heroes are the 3 suitors, Van Helsing and Jonathan Harker, because they all have to be white men, of course. So those are our 5 heroes. Mina, Lucy, all the other characters, they're all tertiary or they are victims waiting to be victimized kind of thing. But I really appreciated the way that they do the introduction of a Victorian-style party where each person is getting announced, and then basically you can have that 30-second introduction where they meet one of our main characters, and you can see how they interact, and that tells you everything you need to know about the person, like the psychiatrist guy tripping over the bear head and her babying him, and you can see, oh, that's how this relationship works. She kind of takes care of him, and she likes feeling needed, and he likes having somebody to look out for him. The big American guy with the big knife, and she's like, oh, it's so big, Quincy. And
dirty.
Okay, so this is purely sexual. I get where this is going. And then Arthur Homewood. Arthur Homewood is the guy that she's like, he's got all of it. He's a little bit sensitive, but he's also very attractive, but he's also, interesting to talk to, I guess. I don't know. That's the Cary Elwes character, of course, because Cary Elwes has to play the perfect...
He also has a title.
Yeah, Lord Arthur Homewood. Lord and Lady Arthur Homewood. The way she keeps saying it has just been ingrained in my memory now. I know, even when I was doing the show years later, somebody said, what are the three suitors? I'm like, the psychiatrist, Quincy, and Arthur Homewood.
They're like the D&D party, right?
Yep.
They group up and they're the fearless vampire slayers. I love that scene where they go in to take out Lucy with under Van Helsing's direction.
Yeah,
it's classic, and they're like, they want to do the right thing, but they're fucking freaked out, like he's about to like drive a stake into this corpse's heart, and it's so grim.
And one of the things I think they missed out on that I stole from the book, and I brought it into my version of Dracula that I was making, is that they missed an opportunity here that Lucy dying and her being buried, I think it works better in the way they did it in the novel, that by the time Van Helsing gets into town, Lucy was buried a week ago.
Yeah.
She's gone. We're already all dealing with her death. And he goes, she no longer resides in that grave. And they're like, yeah, right, whatever. And then you go look, and you see that there's no body there. And now we've got to where the fuck is Lucy? We got to find her. What's been going on? But also, the other thing that made these books really creepy at the time, and maybe still nowadays, as you were saying, is that they had news clippings, that you would see pieces of newspaper clippings. And one of the ongoing stories that seems like it's...
child abducted, yeah.
Exactly. It's one of those background stories that a lot of people just kind of gloss over. But while this is happening, a lot of children are going missing in London. It's kind of implied that Lucy is going out and eating fucking babies. That's the first thing she's done since she's become a baby vampire herself, is she's going out and killing little kids. And now it gives you more of an incentive. We've got to kill Lucy. And you see the difference between Dracula and Lucy. Dracula is draining people that are kind of pseudo-consenting to be with him, whereas Lucy is killing fucking children. She is a monster. She needs to be destroyed immediately. And I think they missed an opportunity, although that would have added 10 minutes to an already a little bit long movie, so I get it. But I think them just coming right as soon as she was dead and cutting her head off, then that makes her more sympathetic. I think you could have made her more monstrous.
Yeah, that's one of the concessions for the length and, pace of the movie. And I
that's what makes Lucy so cool, is that she's like, she spends her life, she wants to be a slut, and she can't be a slut. So she's just like holding off. And the one time she kind of is taken under a vampire's glamour and she actually has a sexual experience, I guess. I don't know. Then she comes back as this undead, and she's like, you know what? Fuck society, fuck the world, fuck all of it. I loved that character, that she embraced being a vampire in a way that Dracula did not. And you see that in further stories in the future now. There's always the reluctant male vampire and then the younger female vampire that he turns that is like, fuck yes, vampires. This is cool. Yeah. We get to live forever and fucking kill people. Hell yeah, let's go do it,
She has power.
Yeah, and she embraces it and she loves it. And I wrote that into my story because I think that's part of the interesting dynamic between these two. Is Dracula, that's what makes him sympathetic, is he doesn't necessarily want this, but okay, I guess I'll deal with it, whereas when she gets it, she's like, oh hell yeah. But we don't see that in the movie. She just gets immediately killed for being evil just because she happens to be a vampire. They take away her agency.
They make up for it with it being almost borderline Evil Dead level of like, undead shrieking and gouts of blood spraying in people's faces.
The blood vomit. Oh my god, it gets in his mouth and everything. Like,
and I just love the reaction of all the suitors, like watching this unfold, like the horror on their faces.
What the fuck?
And Van Helsing is just gruffed and matter of fact about it.
Like, of course that's what was going to happen. What did you expect? And they're like, ah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
This is
in
bloody
Anthony
work.
Hopkins' defense, what do you do when somebody vomits blood into your mouth? Like, you continue the exorcism. You just continue the exorcism.
Nope,
Right.
I pass
Power of
out.
Christ compels you. Ugh, puh, puh.
So, and then from there, that's when Dracula hotboxes Mina in her bed. But when the guys show up, for whatever reason, this scene, Keanu Reeves has a stark white wig, whereas for the rest of the movie, after he's come back, he has like some shit sprayed in his hair that looks terrible to make it gray.
Yeah.
I think in the novel, he just got a gray streak on one side. He looked uncharacteristically old for how long he had been gone.
But in this scene, he's got a shock white wig, and I wonder.
It looks like Christopher Walken.
It must have been filmed first, and they decided they didn't like it. So then the rest of the scenes were. I don't know what happened, but it's like noticeable how like full power white. It's very noticeable, and I clocked it immediately.
One of the lines that Dracula uses when he's talking to, I believe it's Mina, and she mentions the wolves in the background, and he says, "What sweet music they make." And that is a direct line from the novel. And I've always loved that line of somebody hearing what is offsetting or off-putting to one person, and to another person, what sweet music they make.
Children of the night.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's one of those lines that has transcended oceans of time. The wolf loose in town is a little bit of symbolism that it made its way into the movie a little bit, but in the novel it is one of those ongoing news blurbs like the missing children, that there's always what they assume is a wolf loose in town. It could be argued that there are several wolves because the smaller creatures, the wolves, follow Dracula and he commands them. Or it could be just pure symbolism for, yes, there is a wolf loose in town and his name is Dracula.
I mean,
the real wolf is.
He takes the wolf form and prowls around. Is the way I've always.
But he also but also there's a scene where he's actually petting the wolf, so that implies that there are other wolves with him too. So you never know.
Familiars,
and that's how even later on, like some of the special effects. Oh my god! In the big fight scene where he goes into the closet. And then they shine the light on him, and his eyes are still there, but he turns into a body of rats that all fall to the ground. That's the kind of shit that Dracula could pull, and you wouldn't know which rat is actually him. You would have to kill every single rat in that room to maybe get a chance at doing some damage to him. But you don't know which is which, and at the time they all scurry in different directions, and he can control all of them, so you don't know. He's such a cool bad guy.
And you have to deal with the fact that there are rats everywhere, and most people aren't exactly excited about there being rats.
Yeah. And that's the creature, the small creatures, the creatures of the night. When they show up, everybody runs away, just like they. And that's why it's interesting. That's why that storyline of Mina not running away, Mina being attracted, running towards the wolf, that kind of thing.
I just love all the symbolism in the movie. I really do. Like, that's one of my favorite things about it.
It's not exactly subtle either, but it's still well done, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What I call his vampire lord makeup looks fucking fantastic, and it definitely seems like Skyrim for their vampires took a page from that. They look almost 1-to-1.
Yeah.
With the big flared out, bat nostril and the big ears and like the fur and musculature.
Now that is a Batman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
What are you? I'm Batman.
I'm Dracula.
Yeah, they switch. Batman says he's Dracula and Dracula says he's Batman.
Uh-huh. I'm just looking at I kind of stopped taking too many notes at this point and just enjoyed the finale.
A few more.
I have one that I really don't remember what it's from at all.
Let's help you. What does it say?
Just says the asshole of fire protection. Oh, the scene where they're rimmed in fire. That's what it was. It looked like an asshole.
Oh yeah, that's pretty close to but yeah, the asshole of fire protection. That's the sphincter of serenity.
Yes.
This movie feels like it borrows a lot of the same sensibilities from Phantom, whereas Dracula, the original novel, I wouldn't say has much in common with Phantom of the Opera, but this movie has something in common with like the musical almost. The way that they both kind of romanticize these villains and given them more of an actual, when I say romanticize, I mean it in the classic sense. It also like they make them have romantic affections be a primary point of the story too.
Right.
Whereas I don't remember Phantom of the Opera in LaRue's book being like falling in love, but I barely read that, and that was many, many years ago, and I did not like it that much. I see this love story as a similar but opposite story to Lady Hawk, as much as everybody hates Lady Hawk. Whereas in Lady Hawk, a curse kept the two of them apart and allowed them to never see each other truly. In this one, a curse was able to bring them back together. Ironically, that he, by being cursed, the only good thing that came from that is that he got to see his wife again, even if only briefly, even if only for a few conversations, but he got some afternoons with her in London, and he got to die in her arms. So like that curse is what gave him that.
There's also similar levels of acting chops and accent work.
Yep, yeah.
Lady Hawk.
Both with some amazing work, right? Yeah, like you're looking at Gary Oldman and you're like, yeah, his acting performance reminds me a lot of the amazing performances I saw from Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Why do you do this?
His acting performance reminds me a lot of the acting performance of Imperius, who was the only good person in...
I was thinking more along the lines of Keanu and Mouse. You could probably interchange those characters, and not much would happen.
Both amazing award-winning actors. Yeah, okay, anyways, that court case has been adjourned.
Yeah, I find you in contempt, sir.
Yeah, you are not on the bar today, Judge. You're shittership.
You say that, but you're about to insert a gavel sound right now because I am finding you in contempt of court.
No, I haven't been a judge for one of those. Somebody has to make a really bad decision movie-wise so that
I'll do that with a Friday the 13th one of these days.
I just want to tell everybody silence over and over again. That's the only thing. I don't even care what the
That's
movie
the
is.
most fun part, yes. I just wanted to talk about Van Helsing succumbing so easily to Mina's wiles. Like, she's just obviously like seducing him with ulterior motive, and he's like, well, all right, I guess we're doing this. And like,
it's been a minute for him, okay? It's been a bit. You don't get a lot of action when you're a vampire hunter on the woods or on the on the travel.
That is true. Like, Van Helsing is not known the touch of many women because he's such a fucking weirdo, and he's always fucking fighting things, so he's always sweaty and bullshit.
I know.
And she is painted as one of the most beautiful women in London, so yeah, it wouldn't take much. And that was kind of my note, that this movie is so much more sexual than the book was. Obviously, coming out during Victorian era, if you were trying to appeal to the masses, if you wanted that G or PG rating of the time, I know that wasn't a real thing, but you get what I'm saying, then you had to keep things very
subtle,
above the board.
Yeah.
You could put a little subtlety, but even then, it couldn't even be very over the, it could be subtle that they liked each other, but not subtle that they wanted to touch genitals. None of that shit.
It's such a weak spot, which I guess is part of the character, which I appreciate, but for the wizened, all-knowing vampire hunter to just be like, well, this is real, so...
he took a lesson from the Joker's theme. If you're gonna go, you better go with a smile.
You were talking earlier, too, about the different sounds and how it sounded very sexual when Lucy was being ravaged. How about the scene where Mina actually finally drinks the blood?
Oh, yeah.
So sexual. So sexual.
Yes.
Like, I never even, as a young man watching this movie, I was like 13, 14 at the time. A woman, like kissing the chest in that way of a man I was like, ooh, do girls do that? Like, I've never seen that in media. I've never had I didn't have a lot of experience with girls at that age. So like, I was like, oh my God, is that something people do? Does that feel good, or does that tickle? That's the first thing I'm thinking. Like, that's gotta tickle him. How does he not laugh when she's like licking on his rib cage? I would be like, hee hee hee.
So you got your sexual awakening from Francis Ford Coppola's
No, but
Dracula.
it didn't titillate me. Like, there were movies that turned me on. This one didn't turn me on. Like, Winona Ryder's turned me on in other portions of this movie, not that scene. That scene, it confused me a little bit.
I feel strange, but also good.
And also, I was still at 14. I wasn't sure if Dracula was supposed to be the good guy or bad guy. So I was like, should I be rooting for Van Helsing? Well, I like Dracula a little bit more, and that feels wrong. Like,
hey, you want him to find his love. Like, that's what the movie does for you.
But even beyond just the visuals, like the way that Gary Oldman was holding himself, the noises he was making, like, it's overtly sexual without being overtly sexual.
At one point when Dracula, I think it's during the Bat Lord scene, the one you were talking about in the apartment right after Dracula and Mina have their little sucky-a-thon,
Sucky-a-thon?
I don't know. Something like that, yeah. Van Helsing, I think this is where Van Helsing and Dracula are actually exchanging words and exchanging some barbs. And Van Helsing says something to him about him being an abomination of God. And Dracula says to him, and I quote, "I was betrayed. Look at what your cult has done to me."
Yay.
It's a good line.
And I was like, oh, man.
It is a great line. I had the same reaction.
I fought for your church. You betrayed me. Look at what your cult has done to me. Yeah. And, oh, my God, how many people could say that about, and I'm not just trying to pick on Christians. A lot of religions have had some really questionable times in history. How many people could say that about a religion? Look at what your cult has done to me.
Even beyond religions, like anytime you're holding something up as an ideal or something that everybody should subscribe to, there's always victims that have bought in a little too much and have lost everything as a result.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine a Palestinian saying that today. Look at what your cult has done to me.
Yep.
Anyways,
let's go. Like, think of an MLM, a multi-level marketing. Like the same thing. It is.
I love that we took it from Dracula to the Palestinian genocide to multi-level marketing skin cream stuff. Like, I love that. That's wonderful, and I see the connection. I totally see what you're talking about. So I have a note here.
The Dracula to multi-level marketing pipeline is dangerous. You got to watch out for that.
Yeah. I have a note here that I kind of hit on earlier. Who are the heroes? Van Helsing is fucking not right in the head a lot of times. Keanu is not likable. Hardly anybody is likable except for Carrie Elwes. So I guess Arthur Holmwood is the hero.
And that's because he's always likable.
Yeah, and it's just his natural charisma, his Wesley from Princess Bride charisma.
As you wish.
At 1:49, at 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 30 seconds on the recording that I have, right around there. So if you have a recording, listen to yourself, and I will splice it in here, dear listener. There is a time where Van Helsing is trying to get Mina to eat.
Here, you must eat.
And she says to him,
"I am not hungry."
It is such a bad accent. You could have said, "I'm not hungry," and that would have been fine. But it's like she tried to put an accent on "I am not hungry" and growl it at. Oh,
it was the vampire coming out, you know.
Yeah, the vampire is automatic cringe. She hasn't learned how to deal with the cringe of being vampire. Right. Dracula somewhere is like, she'll learn in time.
It will get better.
There's a connection to Star Trek.
Of course there is.
Resistance is futile.
Billy Campbell, the man that plays Quincy. The man that played Billy Campbell. Billy Campbell plays the man that plays Billy Campbell is the actor that plays Quincy in this movie, the American with the big knife. And he is also the actor that was originally cast to be William Riker on Star Trek The Next Generation. But he ended up losing the role to Jonathan Frakes. And because they really enjoyed Billy Campbell's, him as a person, and he thought he was really talented, they brought him back for a couple of episodes. One notorious one being The Outrageous Okana, which is one of the not well-liked episodes of Star Trek that involved just a swashbuckling, handsome man that comes on the starship and sleeps with a bunch of women and pisses everybody off. And that's who this character plays.
That is our podcast within a podcast that I'm going to call 6 Degrees of Star Trek.
Everything connects back to Star Trek if you try hard enough, my friend.
I've
See, what you notice here in The Birth of a Nation is they're against socialism. Socialism as represented in Star Trek by...
Yeah.
I'll find a way, my friend. I will find a way.
I want to know what the hell is going on. What the hell is going on? Evidence! What the hell is going on? Are you questioning the validity of my plan? Evidence! You don't know what any of this is about, do you?
Here we are. So we basically can cut to the end because we're already kind of dancing around it. The ending is them killing Dracula, stabbing or slicing his throat, which that is wonderfully timed that he's trying to get back there right as the sun goes down, and they time it so he's popping out right as somebody's slicing his throat. Such good drama and such a cool way to build drama between Dracula, somebody that could wipe the floor with humans, and humans that there is a timetable when they can kill this thing. Him racing against the sunset to his castle. Oh, classic, wonderful, chef's kiss, no notes.
Yes.
Him popping out and getting sliced immediately. Oh, what a quick, sad ending. That's fine. Him dying in her arms and even like Jonathan, everybody's saying like our work is done here, hers now begins or something. Basically, she's gonna go let him die and watch him die.
Yeah.
What a moment! That's one of the few moments that I actually found Jonathan to be likable. That he showed faith and he showed a lot of respect for his partner, that his wife, knowing that like, yeah, we can trust her, let her do her thing. Like, I can see what she's doing. I want her to have this moment with this man, even though I don't fucking understand it. Accidental polyamory. But I did have a question at the end where Dracula, like, he kisses her and where she kisses him really, and then he kind of turns back into his former self, which I always implied of he's using what little bit of magic he has left to make himself attractive for one moment so she can see him as
I think
members.
I think of that more as like the spell is broken and he's returned to the curse.
What happened? Why? Why is the spell lifted? Because then your side kind of leans into it, because then right afterwards when he dies, he like looks up to heaven, a light shines on his face, and it kind of implied that he floats up to heaven?
Yeah,
that's the film language, is that we're seeing him go to heaven?
He's let the hatred in his heart go. Because
why? When he was trying to kill everybody? Was that when that moment happened?
No, when
he died?
Well, yeah, exactly. Right when he dies, when they share a kiss, he has been reunited with his love.
True love's kiss cures all. It's a fairy tale.
Yeah, see, that's the part that I'm just like, okay, that's... No. Just because your wife gave you a kiss doesn't forgive decades of murder or hundreds of years of murder and whatever else you've done to people, trapping them and draining their blood for days at a time. Torture,
kind of the basic tenet.
Getting a kiss from your sweetie doesn't excuse all that. And he didn't explicitly ask for forgiveness.
Think about the God we're talking about, though. That's the contract.
Thank you. That's what I was just gonna say. Like,
I'm sorry. Okay, come on.
But he didn't even. That's what I'm saying. He didn't even say sorry. He just made out with her for a second.
Maybe he thought sorry.
And that's all it took.
Yeah.
It just seemed like I get it, but
you have to have contrition. It doesn't say you have to.
I can't be the only one that my mind rebels at the thought of Dracula getting a kiss he will see and going up to heaven because of it. It's like that's a bit much in a gothic horror story for a kiss to send you to heaven.
Yeah, so all is well.
I get it. Like you explained it to me. I understand how it works. I just don't agree with how it works. I remember there was that interesting duality that the whole movie starts with him holding her dead body as he cries, and it ends with her holding his dead body as she cries, and then the picture of him holding her body is above them, watching her hold him as,
What don't you fucking understand?
They both held each other as they died in different times, separated by oceans of time. And that concludes Dracula.
Thus concludes Dracula.
Well, first, there's several real questions. I wanted to point out the thing you brought about the Muppet question.
Okay.
Are we going to start doing that?
Yeah,
we're going to have 3 questions at the end of every episode. We're going to have the Muppet question, the popcorn question, and your MVP.
Yep.
Muppets, popcorn, and MVP. Okay, I'm writing that down.
So I think this movie already answers that question because you literally have Gary Oldman surrounded by a bunch of Muppets.
No, Muppets have more feeling.
But I would, Muppets seem more alive than Keanu Reeves in this movie.
Yeah, I would say you keep Gary Oldman and everybody else is a Muppet, but also this is not the original meme, but it would be interesting to see Dracula still played by Gary Oldman, but he's the Muppet and everybody else is still human. I think that it would, and you just change the soundtrack a little bit and you could make a comedy out of this.
Yeah, that would be good. But just picture it. To close your eyes and picture Gary Oldman and everyone else's Muppets, like the Van Helsing Muppet. I love it.
What blood flows through these veins?
It sticks with the ideal that the bad person is always the human and the Muppets are always the good people.
Uh-huh.
Look what your cult has done to me. Hey guys, I think he's a little upset.
But also, can we make Lucy, like maybe Lucy's the only human and the rest are
Jonathan
Muppet.
is definitely a Muppet.
Vampire.
Yeah, that's Van Helsing can be animal.
All right, so the popcorn bucket for this.
It's a big box of dirt. It's a big box of dirt that they pour your popcorn in. Yeah.
Oh, a coffin. Easy peasy. Just make it look like a coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, coffin. Okay, that one. It was kind of boring, but it's easy to do.
That one writes itself, yeah.
Yeah.
Who is your MVP of this movie?
I'm gonna say Dracula's green stinky fart.
Specifically the green stinky fart. What about you, Jamie? Who's your MVP?
I have to go with the shadows, which are not humans, but they're my favorite part. I love that shadow play.
Peter Pan's snarky shadow.
Yep.
The sassy shadows behind the background. Yeah, for me, I would say, obviously, I'm going to go with Gary Oldman because he held this fucking movie up. You know that scene where Captain America holds the helicopter and he's holding the building?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like him on this movie.
Yeah, Gary Oldman did that with this movie. But I will give honorable mention to Renfield. Renfield was so weird and delightful.
That's my real MVP. I was gonna say is Renfield, played by Tom Waits, not actually Dracula's green fart.
He gets like a half a vote for me because he was wonderful.
You only get one and you already wasted it.
Yeah, you wasted on Dracula's green fart. Too late. It's committed to the annals of history.
Fine, I stand by it. That's the part that made me laugh the most.
So after everything has been said and done, hey Keith, did you like Dracula, and would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
You really want to do this? Here. Now, yes. Okay. Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I did like Dracula, and I would give it a thumbs up, and I would even recommend it. You should probably watch this movie, because it's cool. There's actual horror, there's stuff that might make you laugh, and there's just a lot of great filmmaking techniques on display if you like movies. So that's a thumbs up from me. What about you, Jamie? Did you like Dracula? Would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I do like this movie. I love it so much. It's so atmospheric and gorgeous, and it has a great story to it, and even Keanu Reeves not doing anything but standing there staring at a camera most of the time can't ruin it. So I give it 2 thumbs up, and I gotta know, Kelly, what about you?
Oh, absolutely thumbs up. This is one of those classic Halloween movies. Maybe it's because of the timing. It came out when I was like 14, 15 years old or something like that. So it's classic Halloween to me that anytime I'm like, if I was decorating the house or carving a pumpkin, this is the kind of movie I would be having in the background listening to, because this is one of those quintessential Halloween movies. Like The Pit and the Pendulum is another one, the old Alfred Hitchcock thing. There are a couple that, like Home Alone is a Christmas movie. This is a Halloween movie through and through. So big time thumbs up. The music, even the acting, like Keanu Reeves being as cardboard as he is, it's okay to me because it makes me hate him, and I think that's okay in this movie to hate him. You know, he's kind of the villain.
Makes me hate him too.
Yeah, the moment that he marries Mina, everybody in the audience is doing the face palm from Naked Gun, going, "Oh shit, what are you doing, man?"
Crazy bit of trivia too. That marriage was actually an actual marriage. Like, it was done by actual Roman Greek Orthodox ministers, and they may actually be married.
Oh yeah, I think I saw a meme about that. They actually technically would be considered, and they were both like heartthrobs of the time too. So I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, dream pairing," right? Like the ship people. You know?
And they totally like play it up. Like when they talk to each other still to this day, they'll call each other husband and wife.
But I imagine their personalities are so very different, because from what I've heard, Winona Ryder is a bit of like, she's a bit of a nympho, and she's like really kind of wild and out there, and she likes making scenes and being kind of a little bit out of her mind and in public, and she doesn't mind that shit. Whereas Keanu is very, very reserved and very like, oh shucks kind of guy. So I imagine if there was ever a moment where there was any kind of flirting, she'd be like, "Hey, you want to fuck? I'll go take you in the back and fuck you." And he'd be like, I gotta go. But that's just all headcanon, because
that's your slash fic.
That's what I was like. I don't know. Is she a freak, or is that just what you want her to be?
No. I there were guys that dated her that were celebrities. Because, like I said, I had a big celebrity crush. So whenever I'd see like, Kim Kardashian dates so and so, I don't give a fuck. But if like Winona Ryder's ex is coming out and talking about what it was like to date her, I'm like, ooh, what's it like? Because like, I had a crush on her, so like, it's only natural, I guess. So that was our take on Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992 American Gothic horror film. Real quick, it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I'm sure we've all heard of him. It was
relative newcomer.
The music was done by Wojciech Kilar.
Oh, of course, him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Polish classical and film music composer. His great success story was Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, which received an ASCAP award and a nomination for a Saturn Award. But yeah, good job. And its budget was $40 million. It made $215.9. I think it's. Let's go down to the reviews. I would assume it's got pretty good reviews.
It's kind of a middle of the road reviewed, if I remember correctly.
Oh, people were worried about watching this because of the AIDS pandemic and the sharing of blood and stuff. Oh, whatever, people. Y'all gotta get out of your fucking mind. Get over it. Rotten Tomatoes has an average approval rating of 69. Nice. Percent. And average rating of 6.4 out of 10. So it gives it like a decent rating, like somewhat good, which I think that's remarkable to me. I thought it would be higher.
IMDb has it at 7.4.
Yeah, I thought it, like I don't know, I'd put it, it's not, like I said, it's not the most amazing movie ever because the acting is problematic at times and shit, but I don't know. I really enjoyed it, so that's kind of surprising to me that it didn't do better. But hey, they made their money, so good for them. All right, so next week we've got our final week of Scream, Share, and Thrill, where we review our final of the 5 movies that we have picked for our Halloween spooktacular. We filmed these out of order, but that's okay. You don't know about that. It's our secret. Wait, I just told them. Fuck.
Way to go, Kelly. Way to go.
Well,
also,
anyways,
you've been filming these?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always film them from the ground up.
Creeper.
Give them the worst possible angle. I like to look right up my nostrils when I'm talking.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Beautiful bean footage.
This is why there's no video of this pod that's available to you all, because it's just Kelly's nostrils.
Not yet. That's we're gonna have a special Patreon tier. It's like $50 a month, and then you get to see some videos.
Maybe we could they could pay money to watch you wax your nostrils.
Or I'll just have a camera on my feet.
Oh, that's the big bucks.
Yeah,
we could each do a camera on our feet.
And then it's $50 per person. Whoever gets the most subscriptions wins the Foot of the Year award between the 3 of us.
Right.
Hey, we might be the first podcast to start an OnlyFans.
Oh yeah, yeah. And as long as we're like real people and not the AI podcasters, I'm okay with that. I'm gonna go make sure I'm a real person.
Yeah, feet share and chill.
feet share and chill. Oh God. All right. Well, anyways, for Scream, Share, and Thrill, I'm Kelly.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Jamie, I think.
See you later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Farewell.
If you don't stop this, I'm going to call the police. You go ahead, call them!